Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Nandini from Ace Cloud, and I'll be moderating today's session. So, over the last year, Agentic AI has gone from being an emerging concept to being one of the most talked about topics in the IT industry. Every week brings a new framework, new agent, new prediction about how AI will transform everybody's life. But if you speak to the leaders, the question they're asking are very different. They're no longer asking, should we actually use AI? No, they're asking, where do we start from? Which use cases are worth investing in? Why do some pilots scale while others just quietly get disappeared? And what it takes to move from a demo to a production ready AI system. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. This isn't about AI hype, it's a discussion between two practitioners who've been building, advising, implementing AI system across enterprises and across industries. We'll be talking about real use cases, hard lessons organizations are learning, and where enterprise AI is headed next. So, joining us today are two experts who bring together complementary perspectives. Prateek Bansal is the co-founder of GreyChain AI and has previously led Gen AI initiatives at Boston Consulting Group. Today, he works closely with enterprises designing and deploying AI-powered products and agentic systems. Hi, Prateek. We are glad to have you here.
Thanks, Nandini.
Welcome.
Thanks for the introduction.
We also have Vipin, who is an AI advisor at Ace Cloud. He has led technology and product organizations across Oracle, Yahoo, and College Deco, and now advises enterprises on AI and agentic AI implementation. Welcome, Vipin. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Nandini.
So let me open the floor to both of our speakers here. Over the last 12 to 18 months, the conversation around AI has moved along. The question is no longer, should we use AI? Today, we are asking how do we build and deploy it responsibly. So, Prateek and Vipin, what according to you has fundamentally changed over the last year?
I
Over
think
to
I
you
can.
guys.
Yeah. So, from our perspective, we've been working very closely with a lot of enterprises globally. And what we are seeing is that a couple of years ago, the question was, do we go for ChatGPT or Claude or something like that? The question still remains for a lot of organizations. But what people are also seeing is what kind of agents I can go ahead and deploy and build for myself, and what are the ways to go about it. So slowly what's happening is people are still, thinking about, do I, is this model the right approach or that model, or should I build my own stuff? And if I'm building my own stuff, what's my approach, right? And More or less, from a market perspective, we are seeing a lot of internal pilots have started to come to fruition this year, but last year there was a lot of failures and a lot of noise about this piece. So but overall what we're seeing is a great amount of adoption and thinking that people are bringing on the table. Hypnotic.
So, yeah, my view is also the same that every 3 months, so when we talk about the future, and last year the conversation was, is AI even capable of writing software, for example, to take a very particular example about software development. And now pretty much every um, uh, software engineering teams, like everybody is using AI to build software. So the conversation is shifting really, really fast. And what seems like futuristic now is already happening 3 months from now. So that's the kind of rapid pace, that's the pace of change. So people are experimenting, people are piloting, people are, putting things to test. And it's a lot of action.
That makes sense, and you have set the foundation correctly. But before we jump into the use cases, I think it's important to establish a common understanding as well. The terms automation and agentic AI are often used interchangeably, but they are fundamentally very different. Vipin, could you help us understand that distinction and probably then we'll move to the use cases?
Sure. So there are three stages of adoption in an enterprise. So the first stage, pretty much um, everybody on the planet is already on it, which is when people start using Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini as a personal productivity use case. So everybody starts, using to create content or to polish up some content or to brainstorm some ideas, create images, create videos. So that is the first use case when people start using it in a personal productivity use case. The second stage of adoption is when people start stitching, and this has existed for a long time, but after the advent of LLMs, it became even more powerful, which is an agentic workflow. So it's essentially a process. So automation is a process. Whereas when we use agentic AI, we basically give an agent a goal and ask it to accomplish things. So that is the key difference between automation and using an agentic AI.
Yeah, and I think I can add a small bit there. See, automation still has its relevance in a lot of places. You should not think about just going agentic in everything, but fundamentally, things which are very process oriented, has a fixed scope, fixed standard operating procedure, you can still go with automation. But where you need intelligence, thought process, where people used to give a lot of inputs in the process, you can start going agentic in those cases, and we start looking into those agentic pieces there.
I think you've set the foundation right for the session. We have established what agentic AI really, means. So let's just make this practical. There's a lot of discussion around use cases today, but very few conversation around what's actually working in the production stage. So let's just start on what you guys have worked and experienced.
Sure. I think I can start with this.
Sure.
So from if you can move to the next slide, yeah. There's a lot of maturity that we are seeing in organizations, and it starts from people going into experimentation, and this is where you start seeing a germ coming up in some early adopters or people inside your organization. We always try to encourage them. That's where typically experimentation start. But as soon as the leadership starts getting involved, we are seeing a lot of pilots coming in. 2025 was a major year of pilots, and you might have heard about many news of companies doing pilots, maybe getting ROI, maybe not getting ROI. But slowly what we are seeing is at least 5-10% of those pilots have started to come into production, and this is where people have started to think about where is the value, how much money do I have to spend, because it was also not clear how much money they should spend on this aspect in terms of productionizing. What are the metrics I should look into? What does my success look like? There was no particular standards per se. So so slowly from experimentation to pilot to production, and now when people are scaling, cost and those aspects have started to become big factors. As an enterprise, our suggestion typically is that if you're going to production, start thinking scale right now, start thinking the value it brings in, and don't only look into the cost of AI, but also look into the cost of humans that will still work along with AI and the peer work that you do. That still remains a major cost, so you have to balance both of them out. All right. We brought in a few case studies from actual implementations we've done for a couple of organizations. As GreyChain, we serve a lot of banking clients, consulting clients, pharma clients. And this is a clear example of where value has been proven a lot. Agentic L1 automation is a very common use case that people hear. But where we saw value was in the low end tickets, which come either through chat, email, or through your channels like ServiceNow. Voice is still debatable. People are still figuring out what are the right costs, and we have implemented both in multiple organizations. But what I can very clearly give you as an example is that if your L1 process is there, you can really automate it and bring an agentic automation to it. Typically, your agent can read through all your KB articles, successful tickets in the past, and start replying and auto routing to the next loop. One note that I can leave you here with, or key takeaway, is that don't make your agents just just a responding system or a routing system. Think about building a self-learning loop or a routing loop, which means that if a ticket was routed to L2 by an agent, we should, and the agent and the L2 says no, it was wrong, a human says that it was wrong, the loop should go back into your rules engine or your agent documentation or a markdown file, so that your agent can pick it up. Right. These are some of the areas where we have really seen a lot of benefit and a lot of cost advantages as compared to doing it manually earlier. Right. I have another case study on the next slide, which is for a large-scale pharma client. This is a global, pharma client, primarily based out of India, where they build something called as a leave behind collateral. These are pamphlets, brochures that they leave with doctors or pharmacists or pharmacies behind, and they have to be very brand compliant. They have to ensure government regulations are being followed, and they need to create various versions in various languages with various faces, dresses, things like those as well. And every single medication and information has to be accurate. Now, typically, these pharma companies rely on a lot of external agencies. In some cases, even 30, 40 agencies across India and across global to be able to build these collaterals, right? We have been able to build them, an agent which uses OpenAI's image model, uses Gemini's model for image generation, but has an agentic, what we call as a harness around it, which ensures all the guardrails are there, auditing is there, compliance is there. So it's not just that giving a chat GPT and saying, hey, generate my collateral. It actually follows all your brand guidelines, compliances, and everything. And we have seen a huge improvement in terms of compliances, in terms of medical reviews, in terms of approval rates, and a huge reduction in dependency on the external agency, in the process leading to cost reduction. But cost was not a major factor when we were going after this case study. But slowly the organizations are realizing the benefit of the overall solution. So these are the two actual real life case studies we have implemented. I wanted to share with everyone.
Prateek talked about some of the use cases which he has implemented on behalf of his clients. I'll talk about some of the use cases which we have done at Ace Cloud. So I've been advising Ace Cloud for agentic AI transformation across departments. So, every single business process, be it HR, marketing, legal, every single department can adopt agentic AI workflows. And we led an initiative over the past 6 months to transform every single business process and at least look at it if that can be agentified. So I'll talk about a few use cases, and there are tens of such use cases. So one is we built a procurement agent. So what is a procurement agent? We need to procure GPUs, memory, a lot of cloud infrastructure hardware. So we built a procurement agent. This is truly agentic. What it does, it researches vendors. So we just give it a goal, which is that, hey, can you procure RTX series X, some series of GPUs for us at this target price? So what it goes ahead and starts doing is it first looks up its vendors database, finds the relevant vendors. Then if it doesn't find the relevant vendors, it goes out on the internet, starts researching, looks up databases, compiles a list of vendors, and then creates an RFQ, composes an email with Ace Cloud branding, and sends it out. Then once it receives a response, it passes those responses, starts creating a response in return to the replies which it has received, and composes a draft. And then there's a human in the loop. Like, we don't want to send out, since we are dealing with external vendors, we have created a human in the loop where every email which goes out gets verified by a procurement, like a human, like an expert, whether it looks or not. The human edits the email, and once the edit is applied, the agent learns from the edits, so that you don't have to repeat the learnings which it has had. So there's a learning feedback loop which is incorporated in the agent. So it has worked very well. Like right now, we're working with 200 vendors, and this is one agent. It's built using Cloud Cowork. It has a memory, persistent memory. It has a session memory. So it's been working very well for us. So there's another interesting story which I want to talk about. Like, while building this agent, so these are some of the pitfalls, of using an LLM brain, that it is very intelligent but not too intelligent. So there's a case when it needed to parse an email, like for example an email attachment, and it asked us that, hey, can you give us an API key, because I need to access another LLM. So I said, you are the LLM, and then it immediately recognized in its context that, yes, I am the LLM, I can do it myself. So such little things where the while building this agent, we have to take care of. Now let me talk about another case. The finance team is using again a research agent to do due diligence on its clients. So for example, we get a lot of customers, and they can be prepaid and postpaid based on their credit viability. And the agent, what it does is that it looks up NCA website, it looks up a bunch of web sources and social signals, and figures out a credit rating for the website, for the company and the client, and decides to give it a rating. And based on the rating, we can give it a postpaid or a prepaid arrangement. So that is also been put into production at Ace Cloud. So besides this, marketing has been using research agents to create themes, create content, repurpose content for different channels, like for example LinkedIn, or it's a blog post, or so the same content can be repurposed multiple times. So these are few of the use cases. We have been deploying it in our security teams, DevOps teams, even for software development. So yeah.
Thank you, Pratik, and thank you, Vipin, for sharing your insights. I am sure our audience must be taking some notes or getting some insights for their workflows as well. So let's shift the gears a little. Success numbers are always exciting, but the biggest lessons comes from what doesn't work. Before we move to the next segment, I'd like to tell the audience we have a very interesting segment coming in where our both the speakers would be sharing a candid conversation around some trends around agentic AI. So please stay tuned till the end. Coming back to like lessons often come when things doesn't work. So Pratik, you work closely with enterprises on their AI journeys. What are some of the hard lessons organization only discover once they begin deploying agentic AI? Over to you, Pratik.
Thanks, Nandini. See, we're going to share three lessons, but yeah, the first one, which, over the last 3 months, there has been a lot of noise in the industry about, and I thought that should be the first one we should cover, which is around token cost. And there are many, funny stories out there. Organizations like Meta and Amazon releasing leaderboards in their companies where, if more and more people, if you use it more, I'm gonna put you on a leaderboard, which created a problem called token maxing. So instead of actually reusing something for doing something very efficiently, they were using LLMs or these models for something futile, and even reusing for the same purpose just so that they can use more tokens. So managing your tokens, having a very token efficient process is very key in this, and that's a hard lesson every organization is learning. But in our opinion, what you should also think about, and this is something we have started to do and think about in our development cycles. Imagine that you have two engineers, and today, if you ask two people to build something, today you're gonna say you're gonna take 6 hours, I'm gonna take 8 hours, but instead you should ask how many tokens you're gonna spend on doing this work. This is another philosophy that's coming up, that if one person who says I can do it in less tokens and in the same time, maybe that person is better because my AI costs are lower. Right? It's just one example of where you can start thinking and optimizing, but you have to make people start thinking about how much of tokens I'm using. It's just like how much of electricity I'm doing using to do this job, or how much of electricity I'm using for this air conditioning at my home. So you have to think like that, as you go along, because there's a cost to intelligence now. Coming to the next one, which is, dependency is a risk. You might have heard about this news with Claude. The US government suddenly shutting down a model called Fable 5 because it was too, important for the US economy. And that was suddenly a risk for everyone, because I, as a company, build a lot on Claude as a model, even though we build on other models as well. But we also host our own models in his cloud. But fundamentally, if a provider that you're using suddenly switches off a model, it's a business risk because I might have built something on top of it. So as a company, what we are recommending to everyone is think about building model agnostic solutions, because there's great competition out there. There are great Chinese models, open source models, Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini. So you have to think about very agnostic approach, and all. In fact, it should not be a single model, deployment. It should be a dual model deployment, so that if Claude shuts down today, immediately OpenAI, comes up. So that's where third party uptime is very important. The next one that I wanted to cover is, this is hard learning from hundreds of pilots I've seen last year. In fact, I have been part of about 60, 70 pilots last year, and out of which about 10 or 12 might have gone into final production. And I've worked alongside many CTOs and CIOs on this one. What we are seeing is that people start pilots just out of pressure, that I have to now spin up something as a CIO or a CTO or a CEO, that I have to show an AI initiative. What we are suggesting and what we are seeing, pilots which are successful, where the outcome is defined on day one. There should be some clear business metrics, clear outcomes, and it should not only be the productivity or the gain outcomes, it should also be the cost outcomes that you should track. Right. So, from our perspective, these are the three hard lessons that we've seen in the market. And I would really ask everyone to tread well when thinking about agentic solutions, but definitely, it's something that's changing the game for us. Cool. I think this one also I'll cover. I was talking about key metrics that you should track. A lot of people ask us what are the things that we should look for from day one. These are six metrics that we have used time and again. You can generically use all six of them across your life cycle, but fundamentally I would say a couple of these in the middle, which is accuracy and rework rate, are very important ones. Imagine that you had got a system to do an L1 ticket for you and it went to L2 because of rerouting, but it was supposed to be solved by L1 and then L2 sends it back to L1. There's a complete rework, there's a complete life cycle change, there's a process issue there, right? So you have to also think about what is your rework rate in terms of not just intelligence accuracy, right? And lastly, your CSAT and NPS is also something you should track if you're deploying agents which are interacting with your end customers or internal users. I think just wanted to cover that, Nandini. Probably we can move on to the next
So,
one. Over
what
to
we
you.
have understood is that the common thread across all these challenges is that they eventually drill down to infra challenges. Vipin, what does your perspective here? What is your perspective on enterprise ready AI infra? What does it look like?
So there are two options. So one option is that you can use commercial, Claude, Gemini harnesses their LLMs to run your agentic workflows in the cloud. Or the other option is to essentially rent your own GPUs, and which can host open source models, and which you can even fine tune, or if you want to train your own SLMs, small language models. Excuse me. So all of this, what it does is that there is what is happening is that it will essentially make your cost predictable, and sometimes even lower your costs, because now you're just paying for your costs are much more predictable when you're hosting on GPU. So that is another option. Just want to highlight that. And by the way, Ace Cloud provides all of this out of the box. So if people are watching, they're welcome to check it out.
So we've spoken about what's working today. We've spoken about the challenges organizations are facing. But let's spend next few minutes looking what's ahead of us. And I'd like to open the floor for both of you, Pratik and Vipin. What trends do you genuinely believe as leaders should be, they should be prepping for in the coming future, in next 2 months, 3 months, in coming weeks? What are your thoughts about that?
See, fundamentally, one trend that people are saying a lot about is, can agents take place of SaaS overall, right? In our opinion, it's a mixed bag and it's yet to be proven, because some organizations have completely said that I don't need a Salesforce or I don't need this solution and I can build my own. What we are realizing is there is definitely a clear use case for shallow SaaS, which means that if you're only using 10-20% of a functionality of a SaaS solution, right? It is a great target for rebuilding it internally using a Claude code or any coding solution out there or coding assistant out there, because you're just using limited features of the solution. But if you're not doing shallow SaaS there, you are using the whole solution. We don't still recommend going for building your own agents on top of it. Eventually, most of the SaaS players will allow your agents to interact with those solutions. For example, Salesforce has done that with their current solution. So that's one thing that we are seeing in the road ahead. AI native enterprises is the other big area, especially in the services industry, that I'm seeing, where organizations are thinking that not only how do I enable my people, but can AI deliver my end-to-end services to the client, be it in legal, be it in advisory or other areas. So AI native enterprises is this other road ahead or trend that we are seeing. And one overrated trend that I'm seeing is AI employees, where people are saying there'll be 1% companies, 2%. There are anomalies out there, but it's still, I would say, debatable. So these are some of the thoughts that I have. Vipin, over to you.
Sure. So one trend which I am seeing, and I've been on multiple panels last year in conferences, and with fellow CTOs and CIOs, and everybody was talking about how can we use AI, or how can we leverage AI to write software, and that has emerged as one of the biggest use cases actually for generative AI to generate software using English, right? So the conversation now is not about whether it is possible, but the conversation now which is happening in the community is how best to do it. So people are struggling, I wouldn't say struggling, people are figuring out how to do it and what are the best frameworks and the best practices for writing software using AI. Pretty much every, like I mentioned earlier, every software shop has been, is pretty much 80 to 90%, or even more, 100% in most cases, is software is being written using AI, right? So what is the, now does the architecture change because of this practice? What guardrails should be put in place? How do we work with legacy code? How do we how do we do QA? How do we deploy? Does it change the function of a software engineer? Of course it does, right? So these are the questions which engineering teams are dealing with and figuring out, and there are already frameworks in place. Like, for example, in the last few months, and this field is shifting so rapidly, in the last 3-4 months, like this Get Shit Done GSD framework, which Prateek also uses. And then there's GStack, Gary Tan, Y Combinator framework. There is Andrew Kapati. So there are like multiple frameworks. People are figuring out what frameworks should we use, what are some of the best practices now to build software using AI. And that is where the work is happening. And Pradeep, we can talk about loop engineering also, that, these fast iterative loops where agents are given a goal and they have sort of like a checkpoint or a pass fail built into the loop, so that it keeps on iterating over a task until it
Yeah,
does
so
it well. Yeah.
just to add a bit to that, see, fundamentally, earlier when we were using these solutions, we were doing task-oriented work where we were just
Right.
giving a single task and asking system. Now it's moving towards a goal-oriented world.
Right.
I will not get into too much into what is loop engineering, but fundamentally, just think about, you're building a loop process where it iterates and improves itself and, loops itself. And you can think about various steps in the loop. It can be checkpoints, it can be guardrails, it can be reevaluating the answers, right? Or what it has done, and you can in fact use multiple models even to look into the loop, right? Not just, like if you don't want to rely on one provider, you can go with a self-hosted option, fine-tuned option, right? So from that perspective, we are seeing a lot of those pieces. But one thing that I want to leave you here is not doing is not an option anymore as a road ahead, to be honest, right? Whosoever we have seen were investing in even failed pilots last year are doing successful production runs this year, right? At least one or two have gone into production, and there's a lot of learning from that. And what we feel is that if you're doing a lot, at least two or three strong production runs this year, over the next 2-3 years, you're going to become a very mature agentic organization overall.
This sounds great, Pratik and Vipin. You've dropped in your suggestions, and I think people are making notes here. Now, moving to the next part of the session, that's my favorite part. I'm going to throw a few industry trends at both of you, and all you have to tell is whether you think they are overrated, underrated, and inevitable. That's our rapid fire round. So let's see where you agree and where you don't. But I'm very excited for this one. Over to you guys. Pick and choose your
So
pick
I can
replacing
start.
and choose your trends, and then we can
I
start with
have.
the ratings.
I think I've already covered the first one, agents replacing SaaS. I think shallow SaaS is an immediate use case. In the longer term, the jury is still out there, because if someone like Salesforce already knows the best part of the sales process, then they might be the right people to still use. So in my opinion, inevitable, but still the jury is out there.
Yeah, I mean, agents replacing SaaS is a big debate. I think the fight is over the data, like who actually owns the data, and the SaaS companies right now own the data, and there is this. So they will have an upper edge, but they will catch up. The jury is still out whether agents will replace SaaS. The thing which is for sure is going to happen is that agentic workflows and agents will happen. Now, whether that is done by the SaaS companies or third-party providers, that is the jury is still out. So yeah,
I'll let you.
Moving to the
autonomous
next
support is
one.
already happening. I mean, it's already there. It's not even a question. Like most of the times when we're chatting, even for Zomato or Swiggy or a lot of calls, we wouldn't even know until few minutes into the conversation, or that whether we're talking to an AI agent or not. Even for vendor emails, like the procurement agent which we have built at Ace Cloud, all the communication, all the email composition has been done by AI. and I'm not even sure whether the response is coming from an AI or even a human agent. So, like, so our I know that our AI is composing emails and sending it out to different vendors, but whether vendors are using AI or not, that I'm not sure. But I think, so the boundary line is already blurred.
I think autonomous support, it's in my opinion highly underrated. It's a clear, go-to for a lot of people. Autonomous support on voice, the jury's still out there. There are providers, it's cost like when you're running a call in India, it takes about for humans, it takes about 10 to 20, paise or point 0.1 rupee for a call. But when you're using agents, it's actually still about 5-10 rupees to take a agentic AI call, right? So the costs are still high. There are companies like XAI who are coming up with models which are 5 cents, but 5-10 cents is still 5 rupees, right? So there is a huge cost difference in voice. So it's still, I would say, it's overrated right now in terms of voice. We're not seeing a huge cost benefit there when compared to offshore specifically.
So
Um,
AI employees is definitely overrated. I mean, I haven't seen one use case where all the departments have been automated and you have AI employees. So we do need humans in the loop. And in my experience, and I've been practicing it, so we do need human oversight. And so, yeah, Pratik also.
in AI employees, I would say in some advanced cases in consulting firms, I'm seeing that people are able to have AI employees which can do associate level work. But I am not seeing mid-tier work, but at least lower level work we are seeing in some cases. But yeah, it's not. I would say something that's revolutionizing. It looks good on a YouTube video, which a lot of YouTubers are peddling. But yeah, not seeing a lot of that right now. I think I can talk about multi-agent systems. This is definitely something that's inevitable and it's coming. People are doing single agent systems right now, but multi agents is where real productivity lies. And, allowing your developer to use one coding assistant, and imagine that developer using five in parallel, to be able to do their job. It actually changes the game in terms of productivity. As Great Chain, we are doing about at least 2x to 3x productivity per developer because of these multi-agent systems and the way we are working. And we are directly passing on the benefits to the clients. In fact, our clients are happy to even sponsor, these coding assistant licenses as part of our regular, service deals. Um, cool. I'll let you cover your native first.
So AI native enterprises, it's inevitable. I think right now we're in the transformation mode. And so AI native enterprises, any company which has been found in the last 1 year or going forward, has to be AI native. It is not a choice. The productivity gains are real. So it is inevitable that all enterprises will become AI native and adopt AI.
Cool. Yeah, I think in terms of AI native, yeah, organizations are shifting towards that. But yeah, I'm not sure if people can become 100% AI native. Some processes are faster to adopt, some are slower. So let's see where that trend goes. Vertical AI agents definitely inevitable and coming through and underrated also, in my opinion. Um, uh, like for example, legal is a clear example where solutions like Harvey and Legora are coming up, and now within them also special verticalized solutions are coming up where they can do very specific analysis and specific legal work, and that's where the game is changing. So vertical definitely. We work with a lot of banks. We are also seeing a lot of vertical agents for back office, middle office, front office, and within that also further verticalization. I'll cover. You want to cover agent marketplace?
You can talk about agent marketplaces. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's overrated right now. There are many providers out there. There is also a war between various providers. OpenAI comes up with one framework, Claude comes up with another framework, Gemini, Google comes with its own SDK. Plus, there are marketplaces where people are saying, "Oh, I have a model." Right now, open source is the way to go, and there's a lot of providers like LangChain, Crew AI, and others which are giving a lot of open source models out there, highly rated, common, topmost GitHub repositories, which is where we would suggest to start and explore. There's plenty out there.
So yeah, I also think that they're overrated. I haven't. It's, I think, very hard to get an agent from a marketplace and work with it right now. So I haven't seen any, at least in my experience, I haven't seen any real use cases. Human in the loop. So that is definitely underrated. It's not overrated. I do think that AI works very well until it doesn't. So there are guardrails, and in my experience, that it'll do everything fine, and then suddenly you'll realize that it's made such a silly error. So of course it's AI. So it's almost like working with a robot. Ultimately, it is a machine. So it doesn't have that human judgment, human sense yet. Uh, is it? Are we moving towards a world where humans in the loop? So of course, as systems mature, I think it is inevitable that you will have fully automated agentic AI systems. Just so it is inevitable, but right now it is underrated.
Cool. I agree on human in the loop. There's a, everything has to have human in the loop when you start with agentic. Probably you monitor over the next 3, 4, 6 months, see the rework rate, how much human was involved, and then think about, reducing the human in the loop. But we are seeing a huge benefit of human in the loop. I mean, to be honest, majority of my work I do using these assistants, but including co-work and others, but I am still in the loop. Nothing goes without my checkpoint. Right. Same goes for my developers. Everyone, checks the work that the AI generated. They are responsible for the code that AI generated. They are reading through the code, before even pushing the PR into the code base. Right. AGI, I think we don't even know the definition of AGI. Nobody knows the definition of AGI. So right now it's still overrated, but we don't know when it will be achieved. In my opinion, it's already there. It's able to do a lot of our work. It's able to do a lot of intelligence task and heavy lifting. I know it's more intelligent than me, so I don't know how's the definition of AGI right now.
So AGI it's I think the superhuman. It's like when it's I think it's a I don't think it'll so it's a philosophical question more than a practical one, whether we will ever achieve AGI. So I think everybody, just like philosophy, does God exist? So there's a question which doesn't have an answer. So I think it comes in that territory.
So that was fun. And we already have few questions from our audience, and we are opening the floor for more questions. But let's take few questions that we have from our audience. The first question we have is from Sachin. He's asking, is there any solution for shared memory for multiple agents?
So Sachin, there are many solutions out there, which there are SaaS providers or there are providers who are giving it. But if you want to think open source, I would suggest to go for something graph based. So think about building a knowledge graph on top of, if you're looking into, multiple agents on top of code base, then you can look into something called as a Graphify. Graphify allows you to create a graph on top of all your information that's available in the code base and what you are talking about with the code base. There are also solutions like Obsidian which you can consume, but typically I would say start exploring knowledge graphs where you can build it on top of the memory. Very recently, we've built something for a client, and we are seeing huge benefits coming out of that, where memory in a graph can be shared across with multiple agents across the board.
Next question we have is from Akanksha. She's asking, have you encountered a situation with a customer or a client where they asked you to implement agentic AI, but in reality it was an automation project? How did you differentiate between those two?
I can give you one example. There was a very clear example of a loan automation that our client wanted, where documents were coming in and they wanted to automatically start filling in the forms, right? Now, historically, the main problem was how they were reading the forms, right? And traditional OCR was not great. But adding an LLM allows you to do that, but it need not be agentic. It can be just a simple LLM based automation where an LLM is reading your document, interpreting and putting into a system, and that's about it. There is nothing agentic about that process, right? So there is this, thought process of where you can just use automation because it's a basic process. You need not call everything agentic in the process, right? And I think from a uh, um, in like uh, I think I lost my chain of thought there. But my suggestion is, look into what's the real benefit and what's the simplification of the process. If you are able to simplify, and you don't need intelligence in the process, then it can be just automation and you can just, reflect on it.
Okay, thanks Pratik for this one. I think this would also help us to differentiate between our internal tasks as well. We have another question here from Dhananjay, and he asks if there's profitability in implementing agentic AI, how do you measure the ROI beyond the cost savings? So, everybody talks about cost savings, but what is the ROI beyond the cost savings?
So, some of the metrics that I covered earlier would make a lot of sense. Not just cost saving, I would say your NPS and your customer satisfaction is a major aspect that you should look into. TAT is a big aspect. Like for example, loan origination that I'm sharing with you, or KYC. We worked with the credit bureau in Middle East, and their KYC process was somebody comes for a submits document, takes 24 hours to reply back by the six people who were doing the KYC process behind the scenes. Now an AI agent was able to do it in the next 30 minutes. So suddenly your time to TAT and your customer satisfaction change. So I would in fact say don't look into your costs first. Look into these metrics first, and profitability will come if your use case actually makes a lot of sense, right?
Okay,
So,
and I think we'll take the last one.
so there's one
Uh,
more point which I want to add, which is just in terms of the procurement agent which we have built. One is in terms of increase, and even for the some of the production systems which we have built at AS Cloud, is also a difference in capability. So we are also seeing using agentic AI and the entire uh, process and the workflows. So there's an increase in the capability, like the something which was not possible to be done by humans is now possible to be done by agents, right? So there's an increase even in terms of the capability aspect as well. It's not just profitability. So some of the agents are far more capable than humans.
okay, so we have two more questions. Let's take them as well. We have one from Himanshu. Himanshu asks, what guardrails are absolutely essential before allowing AI agents to take actions instead of just making recommendations?
Um, I can give you examples because we work with a lot of banks. See, you really cannot give every access to your AI agent and let the prompt layer to decide, do I access it or not, and how do I interpret it. You have to build your security at your integration level, right? Which means that if you're giving it access to a financial system, only build your APIs or connectors or what we call as MCPs with clear rules, clear guidelines, and clear accesses to those source systems, and build it there as part of your engineering effort rather than relying on an AI agent to be smart enough to not exploit your resources. Right. So security and guardrails are very important. Building at the engineering layer itself rather than building at the agent layer, right? At the integration point itself. Second, on the guardrail side, I would say you still need to ensure you need to give your agents what we now call as there's a whole engineering around it called harness engineering. I would suggest to study it a bit where you are really defining the boundaries of your agent. Like for example, I build an agent and there is a model behind it. I can just go ahead and ask a question, who was Mahatma Gandhi, right? But my agent was not built for that. My agent was a procurement agent. Right. So if you build your guardrails well, it will actually go back and say, I'm not supposed to answer this question. It doesn't make sense for me as a procurement agent, right? So you have to think about, from top to bottom, the source systems and the integrations, and also what the agent behavior is, right? So these are some important aspects you have to take care of when you're building your harness.
Thank you, Prateek. Let's just take the last question. The last question is from Daya, and he asks, if you had to advise a CEO with a limited AI budget, would you invest in better foundation models or in building AI agents, and why?
Um, you want to take that, Vipin? I am happy to also take that. Um,
So why don't you take it first? And I'm
sure.
thinking about the question because I've actually,
Good. So I don't know what limited is, to be honest.
yeah.
So you have to also define what limited is. See, if your limit is say $20 per person or $100 per person per month, then I would say you are best suited for using these off-the-shelf products like Claude or ChatGPT or Codex or Claude Cowork, right? That's the best solution. If you have appetite for a budget to say $500 to $1,000 per month per resource, then in that case you have to start thinking building your own AI agents or leveraging a good AI agent available there, because then you'll start seeing exponential benefits. But if you're experimenting right now and still deciding with a limited budget, I would say Give your, if you have a team of 100, give your top 20 guys you think are early adopters, these Claude $100 or $200 licenses, and just monitor them over the next 2 months of what productivity they bring in or what new things they bring in into the system. I'll give you a very simple example. One of my We used to use Jira and Huli in our company for software development. My team saw that we were spending it for 100 users and $20 a month into $2,000. One of my developers went in over a weekend, spun up a Claude agent, and built me a Jira alternative, which we just launched 3 days ago for my whole company, and my company is no longer spending $2,000 a month on Jira. Right. So again, a use case of shallow SaaS, but I would say there's always power in low budget experimentation.
So yeah, Nandini, I'll give you my 2 cents.
Sure.
So basically, we embarked upon this journey of agentic AI transformation within Ace Cloud almost in January. And what so it is an evolutionary journey. The first step is always to allocate. If I'm the CEO, and then I would basically allocate some budget for Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, so that people start experimenting, and then people start playing with it. So that is the first step. And after that, once people start playing with it and start understanding what the capabilities of these models, then they'll start doing more, which we saw even at Ace Cloud. So we started using NA10 workflows. So basically, then people started stitching their workflows and started creating agentic workflows. So that was a natural evolution. Then the budget, I mean, at this point of time in the second stage, you'll start seeing that people are, there's a the expense, the so-called AI expense becomes a significant budget item. And that is the time when you start rationalizing that, okay, we have been experimenting. Now, what do we do next? What are some of the use cases which we should scale further? And what are some of the use cases where it is not judicial to do so? So it's an evolutionary process. It's not an either or question. I think you have to start with not building your own AI agent. You have to essentially experiment first, learn what the capabilities are, understand what's going on, run some pilots, spend some money, and then slowly increase the budget and then take some use cases to production and even scale them further.
So I was just saying that we had a similar question, but I think you answered. Nishant asked a similar question. When does it make sense to create your in-house agents versus buying something off the market? So you gave a gist to that, but yeah, please go ahead and build upon that. I think Nishant would like to hear that also.
Nishant, if you have a good use case, I would say just don't, think about just who I buy, should I buy or just build. But if you have a clear use case and there's a real benefit and nothing exists out there, you have to go ahead and I would say, build your in-house agent. Experimenting with an in-house agent is now not more than a 5, 6 day job. So you can actually ask these models itself to start building you an AI agent and deploy something on local for you. So my suggestion is look into your use case. If there is profitability that you're seeing or cost benefit or any productivity benefit, immediately you should think about building an in-house agent and experimenting something locally. Even if it's not secure, it's just for internal purpose, experiment with it. And if there is enough value, you can easily build a business case in your organization.
So I also agree that I think building your own agent is far easier. You know your own use cases, you know the context, you have the far better understanding of buying something off shelf, and that is still far off when we talk about agentic marketplaces and you get an agent from and you deploy it internally. So the advice over here, my advice also would be to build your own agent, and it's far easier than you think.
And just for software development, I still recommend using something like Claude Code or Codex, or a GLM 5.2 from China. So just for software development, I would still say, use an agent, external agent. But for others, I would say you can still build your own.
I think we've picked up all the questions from the audience. Uh, Okay, so as we are planning to wrap up, one thing is very clear. Agentic AI isn't just about choosing the right model, it's about choosing the right problems to solve, measuring what matters, and building system that can actually scale in the real world. They can go to the production level. So, a big thank you to Pratik and Vipin for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined us. We hope the session gave you not just ideas but a clear direction with your own AI journey. Have a wonderful day, and thank you, Pratik and Vipin, once again.
Thank you, Van.